What if I told you that in just 1 week you could change your life? Not through luck, not through shortcuts, but through 10 small intentional habits. These aren't magic tricks. They're simple, repeatable actions that shift how you think, feel, and show up in the world. Most people wait for motivation. They say, I'll start when I feel ready. But readiness is a myth. Instead, I ask myself a different question. What's one small thing I can do today that aligns with my bigger purpose? When you move with purpose, even small actions create massive momentum. Ever feel overwhelmed by your to-do list? I did too, until I started following one simple rule. If something takes less than 2 minutes, do it immediately. That email reply, done. That glass to the sink, done. Momentum isn't built on big leaps, it's built on tiny, consistent actions. Most of us react to life instead of reflecting on it. So I started every morning by writing down one thing I wanted to focus on, and every night by answering one question: did I live today the way I wanted? A simple habit, but it forced me to take control of my day rather than letting my day control me. Growth is never comfortable. The problem is we avoid discomfort like it's the enemy, when really it's the doorway to everything we want. So I committed to doing one uncomfortable thing daily, whether it was speaking up in a meeting, taking a cold shower, or having a tough conversation. In just a week, I felt stronger. We spend so much time trying to improve ourselves, but the fastest way to change your own life is by improving someone else's. I made it a habit to ask, how can I serve today? A kind word, a small gesture, a moment of listening. It's amazing how quickly your world changes when you focus on making someone else's better. I could go on, but here's the truth. These habits aren't complex. They don't require special skills or circumstances. They just require commitment. What if I told you that everything you want, more confidence, more success, more fulfillment, starts with one simple shift? It's not about working harder. It's not about waiting for motivation to strike. It's about taking purposeful action. Most people live their lives in reaction mode. They wait for the perfect moment, the right inspiration, the right set of circumstances. But the problem with waiting is that it puts your life in someone else's hands. You're letting the world decide when you'll take action instead of deciding for yourself. I used to be the same way. I had big ideas, big goals, and even bigger dreams, but I never seemed to make progress. I told myself I would start tomorrow. I would work harder when I felt ready, but readiness never came. It was always just out of reach, like a horizon that moves the closer you get to it. And then something changed. One day, I heard a simple but powerful idea. Don't wait for motivation, start with action, and motivation will follow. That flipped everything I believed upside down. I realized I had been waiting for a feeling when I should have been creating it. So instead of waiting to feel inspired, I asked myself, what is one small action I can take right now that aligns with my bigger purpose? At first, it was uncomfortable. I wanted to fall back into old habits. But I committed to trying it for just 1 week. And in that week, everything shifted. The first thing I noticed was how small actions created a ripple effect. I didn't have to figure out my entire future in one day. I just had to take one purposeful step. I started by waking up 30 minutes earlier, not because I had to, but because I wanted to reclaim my time. I spent those minutes journaling, setting an intention for the day. That small habit made me feel more in control. It gave my day structure. It gave my actions purpose. Then I applied this mindset to other areas. Instead of saying I should work out, I asked, what's one small thing I can do to move my body? Instead of thinking I need to be more productive, I asked, what's one task I can complete right now that moves me forward? What happened next was unexpected. I started to feel more energized. Not because I was doing more, but because I was doing what actually mattered. When you take purposeful action, even in small ways, your brain recognizes progress. And progress is the fuel that keeps us going. I also realized that most people fail not because they don't have the ability, but because they lack clarity. They don't know where to start, so they do nothing. I had spent years thinking about my goals, analyzing them, breaking them down into perfect plans, but never actually starting. Now, I was doing the opposite. I wasn't trying to figure out the entire staircase. I was just taking the first step. This shift changed how I approached my work. Instead of getting lost in endless to-do lists, I focused on one meaningful task at a time. I stopped worrying about being perfect and started focusing on making progress. And progress, even the smallest amount, builds momentum. By the third day of this experiment, I noticed something strange. I stopped feeling overwhelmed. My mind felt clearer. Decisions that once felt paralyzing suddenly seemed simple. Should I start that project? Yes. Should I reach out to that person? Yes. The more I took action, the easier it became to keep going. But the real magic happened when I applied this to my relationships. For years, I had been meaning to reconnect with an old friend, but never got around to it. I told myself, I'll reach out when I have time. But time never magically appeared. So following my new rule, I asked, what's one small action I can take right now? And in less than a minute, I sent a text. That one action led to a conversation, which led to us making plans to meet up. A relationship that had been stuck in the past was suddenly alive again, all because of one small, purposeful decision. The lesson became clear. We don't need to have everything figured out. We don't need to wait for the perfect moment. The only thing that matters is that we start. By the end of the week, I had more clarity, more energy, and more momentum than I had in months. And all it took was shifting my focus from waiting to acting. So many people spend their lives waiting for the right opportunity, the right time, the right feeling. But what if the thing you've been waiting for is waiting for you to start? I'm not saying this is easy. Our brains are wired to seek comfort, to avoid uncertainty, to stick with what's familiar. But nothing changes inside your comfort zone. Growth, success, fulfillment, they all exist on the other side of action. And the good news, that action doesn't have to be big. It just has to be intentional. I've seen this pattern repeat in every successful person I've studied. The ones who achieve their goals aren't necessarily the smartest, the most talented, or even the most experienced. They're the ones who are willing to take action before they feel ready. They understand that action creates clarity, it creates confidence, it creates momentum. So what does this mean for you? It means that whatever you've been putting off, whatever dream you've been waiting to start, whatever goal has felt just out of reach, it's time, not next week, not tomorrow, right now. It means asking yourself, what's one small purposeful action I can take today? Maybe it's sending that email, making that call, writing that first page, taking that, whatever it is, do it. Because the truth is, your life isn't changed by grand gestures or massive overhauls. It's changed in the small moments, the tiny decisions that over time create a new reality. A week ago, I was stuck. A week later, I had momentum. Not because I figured everything out, but because I stopped waiting and started doing. And if it can work for me, it can work for you. So don't wait. Don't hesitate. The moment you take purposeful action is the moment your life begins to change. And the best part, you don't have to wait another second to start. There's a reason most people feel overwhelmed. It's not because they aren't capable, not because they lack talent or ambition, but because they're stuck in the mental trap of thinking everything has to be done perfectly all at once. And when the weight of all those unfinished tasks and responsibilities piles up, they freeze. I used to be the same way. Every day felt like a battle against an ever-growing to-do list. The emails I hadn't responded to, the projects I hadn't started, the workouts I kept pushing off. And with each passing day, that list didn't get shorter, it got longer. The more I avoided it, the heavier it became. Then I came across a simple idea. If something takes less than 2 minutes, do it immediately. At first, it sounded too simple to make a real difference. But I was desperate for change. I figured, what do I have to lose? So I decided to try it for a week. The first thing I noticed was how many small tasks I had been putting off, things that took almost no time at all. That email reply I had been avoiding, 30 seconds. Washing the coffee cup instead of leaving it in the sink, 1 minute. Sending a quick text instead of telling myself I'd do it later, another minute. And here's where the shift happened. Each time I completed one of these tiny tasks, I felt lighter, more in control. My brain was no longer cluttered with reminders of things I hadn't done. I started moving through my day with a sense of momentum instead of feeling buried under procrastination. It turns out our brains love closure. Unfinished tasks create mental weight. They drain our energy even when we're not actively thinking about them. But every time we complete a task, even a tiny one, it sends a signal to our brain that says, I am making progress. And progress, no matter how small, is the fuel that keeps us going. By the second day of applying this rule, I realized something else. The 2-minute rule wasn't just about getting small tasks done, it was about eliminating resistance. One of the hardest things about making progress is starting. It's not the workout that's hard, it's getting yourself to start moving. It's not writing that's difficult, it's opening the document and typing the first sentence. It's not making that phone call that's challenging, it's dialing the number. But when you commit to doing something for just 2 minutes, the resistance disappears. 2 minutes is too small to argue with, too short for excuses. And once you start, something powerful happens, you keep going. I tested this with exercise. Instead of telling myself I needed to do a full workout, I committed to just 2 minutes of movement. That's it. 2 minutes of stretching, or a few push-ups, or a quick jog in place. And every single time I ended up doing more, because once you're in motion, it's easier to keep going. It worked with writing too. Instead of setting a goal to write a full page, I told myself I'd write for just 2 minutes, no pressure. And more often than not, those 2 minutes turned into 10, then 20. The hardest part wasn't the writing itself. It was overcoming the mental block that stopped me from starting. By the end of the third day, something unexpected happened. My productivity skyrocketed, not because I was working harder, but because I was eliminating the tiny moments of hesitation that used to slow me down. I started recognizing patterns. The tasks I had been avoiding weren't actually difficult, they just felt overwhelming because they had built up over time. But when I applied the 2-minute rule consistently, I never gave tasks the chance to pile up in the first place. The laundry never became a mountain. The emails never became a backlog. The dishes never filled the sink. Everything stayed manageable because I was dealing with it in real time. By day 5, I noticed a shift in my mindset. I no longer saw tasks as burdens, I saw them as opportunities to build momentum. Instead of thinking, oh, I have to do this, I started thinking, this will take less than 2 minutes, let me just get it done. The hesitation was gone, the resistance disappeared. I felt in control, and the best part, this didn't just improve my productivity, it reduced my stress. I wasn't constantly thinking about what I should be doing. I wasn't feeling guilty about all the unfinished tasks in the back of my mind. I was present, focused, clear-headed. By the end of the week, I realized the 2-minute rule was more than just a productivity hack. It was a mindset shift. Most people believe that success comes from taking massive action, from making huge leaps. But the truth is, success is built in the small moments. In the tiny decisions we make every single day, the decision to take action instead of delaying, the decision to start instead of waiting, the decision to eliminate resistance instead of letting it build. And once you start living by this rule, something incredible happens. You stop seeing tasks as overwhelming. You stop feeling stuck. You stop waiting for motivation and start creating momentum. The difference between people who make progress and people who don't isn't talent. It isn't intelligence, it's an even discipline, it's this. The people who move forward are the ones who take action, no matter how small. So here's my challenge to you. For the next 7 days, whenever you come across a task, ask yourself one simple question. Will this take less than 2 minutes? If the answer is yes, do it immediately. No hesitation, no second guessing, just do it. And if the task is bigger, start with 2 minutes anyway. Because once you begin, you'll be surprised at how easy it is to keep going. Your life won't change overnight, but it will change in the small moments, in the little decisions that build momentum, in the tiny actions that eliminate resistance. Most people go through life in reaction mode. They wake up, check their phones, rush into their day, and let external events dictate their mood, energy, and focus. They react to emails, notifications, unexpected problems, and other people's demands. By the time the day is over, they feel exhausted, but not necessarily fulfilled. They've been busy, but they haven't been intentional. They've spent the day reacting instead of reflecting. I used to be one of those people. I'd wake up, scroll through my phone, check my messages, and let my mind fill up with distractions before I even got out of bed. I'd go through the day feeling like I was playing catch-up, moving from one task to another without ever stopping to ask, is this what I actually want to be doing? The problem wasn't that I was unmotivated, it was that I wasn't in control of my time or my thoughts. I was living on autopilot, letting my days be shaped by circumstances instead of by choice. And because of that, I often felt overwhelmed, drained, and disconnected from what actually mattered. Then I decided to try something different. Instead of rushing into my day, I set aside time every morning and every evening for reflection. Just a few minutes, no distractions, no noise, just me and my thoughts. And in just a week, everything changed. The first thing I did was start my mornings with a simple question. What do I want to focus on today? Not my to-do list, not my schedule, but one thing that actually mattered. Something that at the end of the day would make me feel like I had moved forward in a meaningful way. At first, it felt almost too simple, but I quickly realized that having a clear focus changed how I approached everything. Instead of feeling pulled in 100 directions, I had an anchor. I knew what was important. I knew where to direct my energy. That clarity affected everything else. It changed how I made decisions. When distractions came up, I could ask myself, does this align with what I set out to do today? If the answer was no, I let it go. That small shift made a huge difference. Suddenly, I wasn't just reacting, I was directing. I wasn't just busy, I was intentional. But morning reflection was only half of the equation. The real transformation happened in the evening. At the end of each day, I asked myself one question: did I live today the way I wanted to? That question forced me to pause and reflect. It made me honest with myself. Did I follow through on what I said I would do? Did I focus on what mattered, or did I get lost in distractions? Did I show up as the person I wanted to be? Some days the answer was yes, other days it wasn't. But either way, that moment of reflection gave me something valuable: awareness. And awareness is the first step to change. Most people don't take time to reflect, not because they don't care, but because life moves so fast that they don't stop long enough to ask themselves whether they're actually going in the right direction. But when you make reflection a habit, everything shifts. You stop just going through the motions. You stop letting external events dictate your life. You stop wasting time on things that don't actually matter. Instead, you start making decisions with intention. You start focusing on what truly moves you forward. You start choosing how you live rather than just reacting to whatever comes your way. By the fourth day of this practice, I noticed something incredible. I felt lighter. Not because I had less to do, but because my mind wasn't cluttered with noise. I wasn't carrying the weight of unfinished thoughts or unexamined feelings. I had a sense of clarity, a sense of control. I also started to notice patterns in my behavior, patterns I had never paid attention to before. I saw the moments when I was most productive and the times when I was just distracting myself with busyness. I noticed when I was making decisions out of fear versus when I was making them from a place of confidence. I recognized the habits that were helping me grow and the ones that were holding me back. This awareness helped me make better choices. Instead of repeating the same mistakes, I could adjust. Instead of falling into old habits, I could redirect my energy. Instead of letting my days slip by unnoticed, I was actively shaping them. But the most powerful part of this practice wasn't just how it changed my productivity, it was how it changed my mindset. I started approaching each day as a chance to improve rather than just get through. I stopped beating myself up over failures and started looking at them as feedback. If I had a bad day, instead of feeling frustrated, I asked myself, what can I learn from this? How can I do better tomorrow? That shift alone was life-changing, because most people let their bad days define them. They make one mistake, and instead of learning from it, they carry it with them. They let it become part of their identity. But when you reflect daily, you break that cycle. You stop carrying yesterday's mistakes into today. You stop getting stuck in the past. By the end of the week, I felt like I had gained something priceless, ownership over my life. I wasn't just reacting anymore, I was reflecting. I wasn't just busy, I was intentional. I wasn't just moving, I was moving in the right direction. And here's the thing, this practice isn't complicated. It doesn't require hours of meditation or deep philosophical thinking. It just requires a few minutes of your time every morning and every night. A few minutes to ask yourself, what do I want to focus on today? A few minutes to ask yourself, did I live today the way I wanted to? That's it. But those few minutes can change everything. Because the truth is, life doesn't change in big dramatic moments. It changes in the small, daily decisions that we make over and over again. The decision to pause, to reflect, to adjust, to move forward with purpose. So many people feel stuck, not because they aren't capable, but because they aren't aware of the small choices they're making every day that keep them where they are. But when you take time to reflect, you start seeing those choices. You start recognizing what's helping you and what's holding you back. You start living with intention instead of just reaction. And once you do that, everything else starts to fall into place. You gain clarity, you gain focus, you gain control over the direction of your life. So my challenge to you is simple. For the next 7 days, take 5 minutes in the morning and 5 minutes in the evening to reflect. Ask yourself those 2 questions and watch what happens. Because the moment you stop reacting and start reflecting is the moment your life truly begins to change. Most people assume that confidence is something you either have or you don't. They look at successful, charismatic people and think they were just born that way. They assume confidence is a personality trait, something fixed, something reserved for the lucky few. But that's not true. Confidence isn't something you're born with, it's something you build. And the way you build it is through action. For years, I struggled with self-doubt. I second-guessed my decisions. I hesitated to speak up in meetings. I avoided opportunities because I didn't feel ready. I thought confidence would come once I had more experience, more knowledge, more success. But the longer I waited, the more stuck I felt. I wasn't gaining confidence. I was reinforcing my fear. Then I came across a simple but powerful truth. Confidence is not the result of success. Confidence is the cause of success. The people who seem the most confident aren't necessarily the smartest or the most talented. They're just the ones who are willing to act even before they feel ready. That realization changed everything for me because I had been waiting for confidence before I took action, when in reality, action is what creates confidence. I decided to put this idea to the test. For 1 week, I committed to a simple rule. Whenever I felt hesitation, I would act. I wouldn't let doubt talk me out of it. I wouldn't overthink it. I would just do it. The first day was uncomfortable. I noticed how often self-doubt crept into my mind. I hesitated before speaking up. I second-guessed myself before making decisions. I wanted to stay in my comfort zone. But each time I felt that resistance, I reminded myself, confidence comes from action. So I leaned in. I spoke up. I made decisions quickly. I took small, bold steps instead of waiting for certainty. By the second day, I started noticing something interesting. The actions I had been avoiding, the ones that felt uncomfortable at first, weren't actually difficult. The hardest part wasn't doing them. The hardest part was deciding to do them. Once I took action, the fear disappeared. I also realized that most of my doubts weren't based on reality. They were just stories I had told myself. I believed I wasn't ready. I believed I wasn't good enough. But those beliefs weren't facts. They were just mental barriers. And the only way to break those barriers was to prove them wrong through action. One of the biggest lessons I learned that week was that confidence isn't about feeling ready. It's about being willing to start. The people who succeed in life aren't the ones who have the least fear. They're the ones who take action despite their fear. By the 4th day, I started to feel a shift. My mind wasn't as cluttered with doubt. I wasn't overthinking everything. I was making decisions more quickly. I wasn't waiting for the perfect moment because I realized that waiting only feeds fear. I tested this in small ways. Instead of hesitating before sending an email, I sent it immediately. Instead of debating whether I should introduce myself to someone new, I just did it. Instead of delaying my workout, I put on my shoes and started. These were small decisions, but they had a powerful effect. Each time I acted without hesitation, my confidence grew. By the end of the week, I had a completely different understanding of what confidence really is. I used to think confidence was about being fearless. But that's not true. Confidence isn't the absence of fear. It's the decision to act despite fear. Most people wait. They wait for the fear to go away before they take action. But fear never disappears on its own. It only fades when you prove to yourself through action that you're capable. I also realized that confidence is like a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it gets. But if you don't use it, it weakens. Every time you hesitate, every time you avoid action because of fear, you reinforce self-doubt. But every time you take action, even in a small way, you reinforce confidence. One of the most powerful moments of the week came when I had the opportunity to speak in a meeting. Normally, I would have overthought it. I would have told myself, what if I say the wrong thing? What if I sound stupid? But instead of letting those thoughts stop me, I remembered my rule. Confidence comes from action. So I spoke up, and guess what? Nothing bad happened. In fact, people responded positively. That's when I realized that most of the fear we feel is just an illusion. We build it up in our minds. We convince ourselves that taking action is risky, when in reality, the real risk is not taking action. Because every time we hesitate, every time we stay silent, every time we hold back, we miss opportunities. We reinforce the belief that we're not capable. By the 7th day, I had learned one of the most valuable lessons of my life. Confidence is not something you wait for, it's something you create. You don't gain confidence by thinking about it. You gain confidence by doing. So many people wait. They wait until they feel ready. They wait until they're sure. They wait until the fear goes away. But that day never comes. The only way to build confidence is to take action first. So if you're struggling with self-doubt, if you're hesitating to go after what you want, if you're waiting to feel ready before you take action, stop waiting. Take the first step now, even if it's small, even if it feels uncomfortable, even if you're afraid. Because the moment you take action, the fear starts to lose its power. Confidence isn't something other people have and you don't. It's something you build moment by moment, decision by decision, action by action. And the best part, you don't have to wait another second to start. Most people underestimate the power of their environment. They think success is purely a matter of willpower, discipline, or motivation. They believe that if they just push themselves hard enough, they can overcome any obstacle. But what they don't realize is that their surroundings, the people they interact with, the information they consume, the habits they reinforce, are shaping them every single day, whether they are aware of it or not. For years, I struggled to build better habits. I wanted to be more productive, more focused, more disciplined. I would set ambitious goals, tell myself I just needed to try harder, and then feel frustrated when I fell back into old patterns. No matter how much I wanted to change, something always pulled me back to my default behaviors. And for the longest time, I thought the problem was me. Then I learned something that completely changed my perspective. Your environment shapes your behavior far more than your motivation does. Most people think they fail because they aren't strong enough, when in reality they are simply fighting against an environment that is setting them up to fail. I decided to test this idea. Instead of relying on willpower alone, I made small changes to my environment that would naturally lead me toward the behaviors I wanted to adopt. The results were shocking. In just 1 week, I saw more progress than I had in months of trying to push through with sheer determination. The first thing I did was change my physical environment. I noticed that my phone was the biggest source of distraction. Every time I sat down to work, I would instinctively reach for it, check notifications, and suddenly find myself scrolling mindlessly. No matter how many times I told myself I would focus, the habit was too ingrained. So instead of trying to fight it, I removed the temptation. I put my phone in another room while I worked. Within minutes, I felt a difference. Without my phone constantly pulling my attention away, I was able to stay focused for longer periods of time. The urge to check my phone didn't disappear instantly, but by making it harder to reach, I naturally reduced my screen time without even thinking about it. I applied the same principle to other areas of my life. I wanted to drink more water, so I put a bottle of water on my desk where I could see it. I wanted to eat healthier, so I placed fruits and healthy snacks in plain sight while keeping junk food out of reach. I wanted to read more, so I put books on my bedside table and moved my TV remote to a drawer. Each of these small changes made an immediate impact, not because I had suddenly developed superhuman discipline, but because I had designed my environment to make good choices effortless and bad choices inconvenient. By the 3rd day, I realized that my environment wasn't just physical, it was also social. The people I interacted with had a massive influence on my mindset, my habits, and even my energy levels. I started paying attention to how different people made me feel. Some conversations left me feeling inspired, motivated, and clear-headed. Others drained me, filled me with negativity, or made me doubt myself. I made a conscious decision to spend more time with people who uplifted me, People who challenged me to grow, who encouraged me, who shared similar goals and values. At the same time, I started distancing myself from negative influences, whether it was certain social media accounts, toxic conversations, or people who constantly complained without ever seeking solutions. By the 5th day, I could feel my mindset shifting. I wasn't forcing myself to be more positive. I was simply surrounding myself with people and information that naturally reinforced a growth-oriented way of thinking. Instead of being weighed down by negativity, I felt lighter, more optimistic, more energized. One of the biggest lessons I learned was that willpower is overrated. Most people think they need more willpower to succeed, when in reality, they need to create an environment that makes success the default choice. If you want to wake up early, make your morning routine as frictionless as possible. Lay out your clothes the night before. Set your alarm across the room. Make your environment signal that it's time to get up. If you want to work out consistently, don't rely on motivation. Set up your space so that exercising is easy and skipping it is harder. If you want to focus deeply, eliminate distractions instead of trying to resist them. By the end of the week, I realized that I had been making life harder than it needed to be. I had been trying to force discipline in an environment that was constantly working against me. But when I changed my surroundings, I didn't need to fight myself anymore. The right choices became automatic. Most people assume that success comes from making one big decision. But in reality, success is the result of thousands of small decisions we make every day. Decisions that are largely influenced by our environment, the people we surround ourselves with, the spaces we work in, the habits we reinforce, all play a crucial role in determining whether we move forward or stay stuck. So if you feel like you're struggling, if you feel like you're constantly fighting against yourself, stop blaming your lack of willpower. Start looking at your environment. Ask yourself, is my environment helping me or hurting me? Is it making good habits easier or harder? Is it setting me up for success or keeping me trapped in old patterns? Because once you align your environment with your goals, everything changes. You don't have to rely on motivation. You don't have to fight against yourself. You don't have to struggle to make progress. It just happens naturally, effortlessly, as a result of the system you've built around yourself. This one shift, focusing on designing my environment instead of relying on willpower, was one of the most powerful changes I've ever made. And the best part, it doesn't require superhuman discipline. It doesn't require endless motivation. It just requires small, intentional adjustments that make success the easy choice. So don't wait for willpower. Don't wait for motivation. Take control of your environment, because the moment you do, success stops feeling like an uphill battle and starts feeling like the natural result of the world you've created around you.